died. I was 58 years old when my husband died. It's real easy for me to go back to those life-changing moments. I was a little girl in excruciating pain from an undiagnosed, yes, deathly infection, would go through an 8-hour surgery, and would go through a trip through time and space. When I got home from the hospital, I was greeted with a lot of attention, but not from that near-death thing. It would be 10 years before Dr. Raymond Moody would write his book called Life After Life. No, the attention that I received was about this medical, unexplainable situation that had happened. There were a lot of looks. There were a lot of whispers. There were a lot of questions, especially when my parents weren't around. And yeah, there was pity. I felt damaged. I felt like I wasn't whole. And I knew that my life was going to be different. The impact would affect me medically, emotionally, and spiritually for the rest of my life. I know now, 50 years later, that that's when my addiction to presenting myself as being perfectly okay, no matter what was going on, to the world. I love this definition of addiction. It was stated by Mike Syme last year. My addiction is a behavior addiction, wanting more of what is causing the problem. That addiction would follow me for the rest of my life. I'm not a perfectionist. Not at all. But I really wanted to be just like everyone else. I couldn't admit to my ongoing medical issues. As a matter of fact, it would be after I was married and my husband found me passed out from pain. And he said, "Jean, this is just not normal." And our life would then continue with regular trips in the middle of the night to the emergency room. And then the next morning, I would show up at work and I would not let anyone know what had happened. I had a lot to learn. And it wouldn't be until the death of my husband that I would learn the hardest lesson of my life, and that's that it's perfectly okay to not be okay. So why is learning lessons so difficult? I think that it's because that phrase is so filled with negativity, as in, I hope you've learned your lesson. But what if life is really all about learning lessons? What if our soul is yearning and longing for us to learn and change our behavior? If only we would pay attention. I think it has to do with our lizard brain. You know, right in the back of our head. Our lizard brain is not smart, it's not intelligent, it's totally reactive. It reacts to stimuli. It's designed to keep us alive. Now, unless you plan to go on Naked and Afraid, I don't think you should live in your lizard brain. In fact, that's why we've got our frontal cortex, so that we can learn, and so that we can ask questions, and so that we can pay attention. And so, yes, we can engage with one another. If the only people that we can change are ourselves, this is perhaps the most difficult thing for us to do. And it has to do with what I believe are 3 steps to help us get there, and to get out of our lizard brain and get into our frontal cortex. I think the first step, I'm going to give you 3 of them, The first step is awareness. So, awareness. What is the trigger? What is it that always happens to you? Have you ever said, why does this always happen to me? It doesn't happen to other people? Well, the awareness piece is being objective and understanding what is the trigger, what is the situation, and getting out of all the negative emotions. So there's no more blame, there's no more shame, and for me, there is no more guilt. For me to come to complete awareness, I had to get past the guilt of my husband's death. Because you see, he was full of life. Everyone loved him. And here I was, the damaged one. I felt so guilty, and it took me 3 years in therapy to understand that it was okay, that it wasn't me that died. So I had to get out of that guilt. And I also needed to not be angry at the teachers that showed up in my life when I was the most vulnerable. You see, a very wise person said to me, you know, Jean, I think they can smell blood in the water. I want you to understand that I had wonderful supportive people around me when my husband died. Great friends, a great faith community, a wonderful boss. I also had great teachers that came and saw that vulnerability that I was trying to hide and pretend that everything was okay. And they came to teach me that I shouldn't trust the people that were untrustworthy, that I shouldn't be loyal to the people who didn't deserve my loyalty, and that I should believe them. I should believe them when they show up for who they are, and that I didn't need to step into their dance. So awareness, getting rid of the emotion, getting rid of the guilt, and getting rid of the anger that I had to what was going on around me so that I could understand and accept the part of the dance that I was participating in. How did I create what was going on in my life? If I could think objectively about it, then I can change it. That's the fun part, because now you get to do some things that maybe you haven't tried before. So they can be small things. So for example, I have worked in male-dominated industries my entire career. But I used to become very intimidated by certain personality types, typically very intelligent, very domineering, sorry guys, mostly males. And I would freeze. I would be in my lizard brain, and I would be full of all these emotions. So my action, I discovered when a gentleman whom I greatly respected came into my office one day with his hands on his hips, and he scowled at me. And instead of freezing, I scowled back at him. And I don't think he found me very humorous, but I found myself hysterical. And so when I got out of that and was laughing inside, I was able to engage with him in a great conversation. So instead of reacting and being intimidated to the stimuli, I took action and I took control. So, big changes for me. The first step was being aware of what the triggers were. The second step was accepting that I had a part that I played. And the third step was trying something completely different and then checking my results. Because I've learned that my results never lie. If I can look at them objectively, they give me really important information. So I implore you, Learn the lesson that appears to you. Figure out what always happens and try something fun like scowling back at someone or doing something just a little bit different to get you up into your frontal cortex. Because when I checked my results, when I started to try some new things, I learned that just like when the moon rises, that I will be loved, that I will be accepted, and I will be valued. Even when I'm not okay. I implore you to learn your lesson because it releases your soul's desires. And the moon said to me, my darling, you don't have to be whole to shine.